Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming to our inaugural afternoon tea, the ladies of Stand Up for Idaho. We will get started like we always do with a prayer and a pledge. And Debbie Sadler has offered to give our prayer. And so, Debbie, if you could tell me we'll get started.
Peggy took off and she said, "Don't say the
She's
prayer
over.
without you. You came in off." Lord, thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to meet as brothers and sisters and family and friends and support those that are running for office and to hear more about their proposals for the way things should be run. We ask your blessing upon this food as we enjoy it and break bread with each other, and those who prepared it, please bless them. Watch over those who have to travel today, that they'll be in your hands. Please bless our community, our state, and our country as we face these very rocky times. Lord, you have a plan and you're in control. Let us keep our faith and our eyes on you, Lord. Thank you again for the opportunity, and we pray for these humbly in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, everybody, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone, to this, like I say, this inaugural event of afternoon tea by the ladies of Stand Up for Idaho. Now, the brainchilds of this is Jeannie and Emily, and they're going to come up and introduce themselves and tell them what their thoughts were on all this and why we're doing all this. And I think it's a wonderful idea. And we've actually had quite a bit of positive response with a little bit of short notice. So I think that the future ones, this is going to turn out really well. So, ladies, would you please come and tell us who you are? Talk to us. Thank you.
I'll kind of put it in between us, okay? I can talk really loud, or...
I can't, so...
Okay, I'll go over here.
I can when it's my kids.
Yeah.
Anyone else, I have a hard time, anybody hearing me, so... I'm Jeannie Bailey.
And I'm Emily Robinson.
And we're friends.
We're friends.
That's it. I mean, we're friends that we have a common interest in politics and in conservative ideas, and we just like to sit around and talk about politics sometimes. So we were sitting around one day, and
this started as a big joke. Yes?
You know what you two remind me of?
Yeah.
Diamond and Silk.
I love it.
The white version.
Yeah. So it started as a joke that we were going to create this women's group, and we were going to have Christmas time where we have things that we give away where we're focused on politics, stuff that we gave away. We joked about making a legislative calendar coming this December. And then we started like, wait, this is a really good idea, because so many women, people want to be involved, want to be empowered to make good decisions and not always listen to what's in the media and everything. And it's a good time for us to talk and become aware and get informed on the issues.
Yeah, so we kept talking, and next thing we knew, we were starting this group, and that was in November, and since then we kind of had gone one direction, and then it changed, and then changed and changed. It just kind of felt like it wasn't quite ready yet, and then we talked to Doug, we had this event set up. Bryan has been super supportive of us. He's been, yeah, I'll do whatever you need us to do. We're like, okay, can you talk this day? Okay, how about that day? How about that day? It just kept changing. And so we finally said it, and we're like, okay, we're not changing it again. And so we invited a bunch of people, and Doug was one of them, and he's like, come join Stand Up for Idaho. Mm-hmm. And so it just kind of felt like the same mission, the same goals, and it just seemed like a really good fit. And plus, Stand Up for Idaho is already established, and so we could come and kind of piggyback with that. And we weren't starting from scratch, which was, I think, one of our biggest challenges. So we're so glad you guys all came, and we love Stand Up for Idaho. One of my biggest challenges, I have 2 little kids, 5 and 7. I can't get to the events because they're during bedtime. And so I'm kind of targeting might not be the right word, but that's kind of my goal, is to look for people like that. They want to be involved, they want to know and learn who the candidates are, that kind of stuff, but they're not able to necessarily come to all the stuff in the evening. So we talked, I mean, a lot of it, we want to empower women so that they can, they can learn what the issues are and know how to, know that they're not alone, they have a community about them. So that's our goal.
That's our goal. So we actually named ourselves the Ladies. So, and we really want to start doing a once-a-month tea party. And yes, I want the big hat somewhere is fun, where we talk about these things and get informed and have fun and really build a bond of women who are strong and powerful and capable of making an influence here in Idaho.
And men are invited too.
Yeah, oh yeah, we don't discriminate.
So don't feel like if you're not a woman.
We might make you wear a hat next time, but right now, no, we don't.
We talked about making you wear a dress, but we decided that's going a little too far.
And we're not very serious, as you can tell.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna start with some food, where everyone can go get some food, and then I will introduce the speaker after that, who I'm excited to. Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Let's give these ladies a big hand. They said start with food, so how about this table? Come and grab you something to eat, and Bryan, come and grab. There's not a whole bunch of it. Let's grab something, and then go ahead and grab something to eat. We need some music.
We do.
We do.
You can get a violin player back.
Oh, a harp?
I will work on that.
A harp?
Thought about getting a rack for that.
You know, so there's this cute little antique store down in Pocatello called Vintage and Vein. Vintage and Lace or something.
This is Janice
So
McGee's.
I went to the hat branch and I just stood there and I found it.
We were running from one end of the state to the other. I can't believe the things he does. And I can tell you, I'm 43. I claim to be 29 or 33. I can't remember every year. But I could not keep up with him. Absolutely is going crazy. So we asked Bryan Smith to come talk today, and I just wanted to let everybody know kind of how I got to know Bryan. And I was not a fan in the beginning, and I had never met him, but I had heard all these things about him. And I said in a recording that I didn't like him, okay? And so Bryan and everybody heard this recording. It's been on the news. I tried to hide away from people, but my name's been in the news over the recording. And he said, and so all of a sudden I'm getting deposed for a lawsuit, and nobody knows who's getting sued in this lawsuit. And Bryan reached out to Chad Christensen and said that he would help me with the lawsuit because they're trying to depose me. And so I got to know him that way. And it's one of the best things that has ever happened to me. Because we all hear rumors, we all hear things on the news, but I can promise you a lot of the things that we're hearing, that we're seeing, are not always the whole truth. They'll take a little sentence, or they'll take a fraction of things, and it's not what's really happening. And I'm so glad that I had that opportunity, because Bryan is probably one of the funnest people I know. He is a spitfire and just will go out and get it. And my first impression was, he is a really smart attorney, and I was so blown away with how smart he was, how he was really good at it. And I'm telling you, he is ideal for what they need in Washington. I lived in Washington, D.C. before moving back to Idaho, and he is exactly what we need. We do not need someone who's quiet, who's going to sit back and let things happen. And I'm grateful that I had that experience. And not many people know this, but Bryan will drop things when you need someone. I'm chairman of a school board, and it's been crazy with school boards. But we weren't letting certain things get forced on our school. Like, we were letting people choose on masks. We were letting those things happen. And so we got attacked by the other side pretty heavy. And when I got a letter one Sunday night, and that Monday, Bryan dropped everything to help me and advise me what to do. And he really gave me the advice that I needed to hear at the moment, because sometimes we want to take the easy way out. And he really pushed and helped me to go forward. And so I'm really excited to introduce him and let him talk to us today so we can learn more about him and what he's going to do for us in Washington, D.C. So, Bryan?
Thank you, Emily. Those are very kind words. Is this working? Yeah, it's working. Thank you very much for that. I am Bryan Smith, and I'm from, actually, I've lived in Idaho Falls since 1994. I graduated from Nampa High School in 1980. I know some of you weren't even born in 1980. I get all that when I say that, okay? And then I went to law school in California. My wife's from McCammon, and she and I now live in Idaho Falls, where we've been for the last, what is that, 28 years, I think is what it is, okay? I am a practicing lawyer, and you may know that in 2014 I ran against Mike Simpson for Congress. Who remembers that? Maybe I should ask, who doesn't remember that? Everybody, okay. Maybe you don't remember, you guys weren't here. And so, let me ask you this. I've got 2 speeches I can do. Okay? The reason I have 2 is because sometimes you get in a situation where people have heard you speak once already. All of us running for office give the same speech over again. And the reason for that is that some people don't hear it, and these are our most important issues. So let's do this. If you haven't heard me speak before, raise your hand. Let me see who we got. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you haven't heard me. Okay, so you have. So I've got 5. Okay, so here's what we can do. I'm going to let you pick, because there's as many as 5 people here who've already heard. So what we'll do is this. Today, what I want to do is, I want to let you, we're going to have a vote. You can hear my standard speech, or you can hear one that none of you have heard. All right? So, who wants to hear the standard one, or the one nobody's heard? Which one do you want?
The one nobody's.
Nobody's heard. That's what you want, okay?
Call it special.
Huh?
We want the special speech.
Well, it's pretty special, okay? So I'm going to spend 20 seconds summarizing my standard speech, all right? And then I'll go to the one that you haven't heard before, and it is way different. The standard speech is, Mike Simpson's been there way too long. He's a total rhino. He's been there for 22 years. He supports transgender rights. He's against the Second Amendment. He wants to destroy our dams. And he doesn't like anything conservative, okay? That's the summary.
That's good.
The flip side of that is that I've been a real conservative. I ran against him in 2014 because he was too liberal. I've stood up for very conservative issues, and I promise to be your conservative voice in Washington. So that's my speech, okay? But let me give you a speech that, it's not really a speech, okay? I guess it's I don't know what you'd call it. I gave this about 3 weeks ago in Boise. I was invited to speak at the Harvest Church to about 300 people. And they wanted me to come up with not a political speech. They wanted me to come up with something different. So what you're about to hear is something that is not a political speech, but yet it kind of is. And the speech is about, and I feel good about this because we had an opening prayer. Right? And so I'm assuming that we're among faithful people. So I gave this, we'll call it a talk, and it was on why the cause of liberty is the cause of God. You ever thought about that? Why God wants us to be free? Does he want us to be free?
Sure.
Sure he does, okay? So the question is why does God want us to be free, and what does that mean, and what should we do? And this was the speech I gave to 300 Christians in the Harvest Church in Boise, and I want to give it to you right now. So When you think about it, the reason that the cause of liberty is the cause of God, the reason he wants us to be free, is that when we keep his commandments, when we follow God's will, it actually honors him and glorifies him. So, you know, if he gives us commandments to keep and we do that out of his love for him, that brings honor and glory to him. And if you think about that, that's why we need to be free. And so let's just think of it this way. If we were all pre-programmed computers, or if we all had a gun to our head to keep God's word and his commandments, then that would bring him no honor. I mean, if we're just computers and we keep his will, then that doesn't mean anything. But if we make the right choice because we love him, then that brings honor to him. We can look at our own children. When our children make the choices that we ask them to make, and say, "Now listen, we want you to do this or do something else," and they listen to us and they obey us, that makes us feel really good. And that actually brings honor to our family. And we've also had children make really bad decisions that doesn't bring honor. So the point is that when we're free to make choices and we follow God's will, it brings honor to God. If we were all robots, pre-programmed, always making the right decision, he would have no honor in that. And so the question becomes, why is this important in politics, that we are free to make choices? And I think that the best place that we can find that is the story of the Good Samaritan. I love this story. Just think about this. There was a man traveling from Jericho to Jerusalem, and on his way on his trip, he was mugged by very bad men. What did they do? They beat him, they robbed him, they took all his clothes off of him, they stole his clothes, they stripped him, and they left him half dead in the dirt. And here comes a priest and a Levite, and they both walk by and they see this guy in the dirt, and they look at him, and what the scriptures say is they pass by on the other side. They did nothing to help him. Now, the whole parable is about who's our neighbor, who we're supposed to love and help. And the irony here is you had a Levite and you had a priest that didn't help the man at all. They made that decision not to help him. And that decision brought no glory or honor to God, but they had the choice to make it. Then here comes a Samaritan who was actually hated among the Jews. They didn't like the Samaritans. And he sees the man, and when he sees him, he doesn't pass by on the other side. He has compassion on him, and he goes to him, and then what does he do? First thing he does, he binds up his wounds using his own bandages. He pours in oil and wine to help heal his wounds. He sets him on his own beast. He takes the man to an inn, and he takes care of him. What else does he do? He pays money. And then he tells the innkeeper, look, I'm going to give you my personal guarantee. Whatever else this man needs, I will pay this. Those were all the right decisions. And as a result, those decisions honored and glorified God. That story of the Good Samaritan shows that when we have our ability to make our own choices, we can either make good choices that glorify God and honor him, or choices that don't. But when you think about it in the context of government, we have choices to make. What do I mean by that? It matters who we elect into office because there are choices that are made that give us the ability to make our free choices, and some don't. For example, if the government takes our wealth and redistributes it, we're not able to act like the Good Samaritan and use our own funds to bless the lives of others. That's why it's so important that the government has policies that lets us be free and make our own choices so we can help others. If they take all our money, you can't help anybody. In fact, what happens is this. Let's just change the story of the Good Samaritan. What if the Good Samaritan showed up and said, oh, I know how to help you. I'm going to take you down here and I'm going to sign you up for Medicaid expansion. And then there's this other government office and they're going to give you some benefits. And then we're going to continue to pay you And the way we're going to do it is we're going to force everybody to take money out of their pocket and give it to you. If that were to happen, then the people who are forced to give the money would feel resentment. And the guy getting the money would feel entitled, right? Does that kind of sound like it is now? But on the story of the Good Samaritan, what happened, because he had his own choice, his own free will, the Good Samaritan felt great satisfaction for what he had done. And the receiver felt, what did he feel? Gratitude. And they wanted to do the transaction again. This is why it's so important that the government let us make our own choices that will involve or result in transactions that people want to do again. So, you know, we have other examples of where government policy takes away our ability to make our choices. For example, we had a governor in this state who made a choice to close churches. When that happened, people lost their choice to go worship God in their house of worship, right? That's what happened. So what politicians do and what government officials do really affect us. Here's what I think is one of the biggest ones. We have a policy in our country that makes abortion legal. There's been 62 million babies aborted since the early 1970s. And as a result of that, now there are 62 million plus all of the children they would have had that now have no ability to make their own choice at all. So because of a bad government policy, now there's a lot of people who don't get to make choices that would otherwise honor God. So the reason I say this story, the reason I tell you this, is that who we vote into office really matters. It matters a lot, because we're now seeing government policies that take away our ability to make our own choices. And so how do we determine who you vote for in office? Because, you know, there's a lot of voices out there. One guy will, don't listen to anything you hear on TV, including my commercials. Come talk to me, okay? But there's so many voices out there. How do you tell? Well, the answer comes, in my opinion, again from the Old Testament. Moses was judging the people from morning until night. They would come and complain and say, "This person stole my horse, and yeah, but you took my firewood," and he was the one doing all the judging. His father-in-law, Jethro, came to him and says, "Moses, you can't do this. You're going to wear yourself out. You need to get other people to do the judging, and you can handle the real hard cases." Moses says, "Who am I supposed to appoint?" This is what he said. "You need to appoint people who are capable, and people who are honest, and people who fear God and won't take a bribe. If you find those kinds of people, Moses, you're going to have great leaders governing the affairs." It was over 1 million people. Think about that formula, right? Capable, honest, fear God, I won't take a bribe. So that actually eliminates about 3/4 of the Democrats, really. Because most of them are atheists or agnostic, right? They'll be bribed at any time. And they're not very honest, and a lot of them are capable. So that's maybe all of them. And so what I tell people is this: when we go look for people to vote for, we need to look at those 4 things. Now, on the issue about don't take a bribe, how does that apply today? Look at people's reports that they file with the state and see where they get their money. Happens to be, I'm running against a guy that can raise $1 million, and 90% of it is not from Idaho. It's from lobbyists and PAC groups. Well, that's exactly what Jethro warned Moses about. We don't want people subject to a bribe. And if you look at where some of these people get their money, it's pretty easy to see who they'll listen to. So with that, I just want people to know that we have a lot of choices to make this next election. A lot of Christians don't want to get involved in what we'll call politics. Why? Because politics is a nasty, dirty business. It's tough. And Christians don't want to do that. So but guess what happens when that happens? Then we have the wicked voting for the wicked, because the good Christians don't want to get involved, and some good Christians don't even want to vote. And then we have a disaster, and then we have to get reactivated. So I would encourage you to look not just at my race, but all races, and judge people by those 4 criteria. Are they capable? Are they honest? Do they fear God? And are they subject to a bribe? Those are the kinds of people that if we vote those kinds of people in, those are the people who are going to make our great leaders. And there's a lot of them running right now. Across the state, in the districts, I've never seen it like this. It used to be, I used to know 4, 5, 6 years ago, I would know every candidate running in a House or a Senate seat because there were only like 10 challengers. Now I don't even know who all these guys are. There's so many of them. So I'm Bryan Smith. I'm running against Mike Simpson for U.S. Congress. If any of you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. With a speech like that, I'm not going to ask any questions. But I do think that it's really important that people realize that government policy affects our ability to make our choices, right? So if the government policy is you will get a vaccine, we lose our freedom, right? And that's a big deal to us. And it's happening more and more and more. So you heard a new speech today, right?
I did.
Yes.
I'll ask you a question. So when we first started talking about youth women, it was right after your redistricting case went before the Supreme Court. And it kind of goes along with what you're talking about anyway, because that's really the way that things that they can do kind of take away our choices too. But with the way that ended up, it's kind of been a while. It's not in the news right now anymore. But like, what are the repercussions of that?
What a great question. So here's what she's talking about. Every 10 years, we have to redistrict, which means that we have to shuffle the deck and make sure everybody's representing an equal amount of people. It happens on a federal level and it happens on a state level. Well, they just got done doing that about 5 or 6 months ago. And there's a process we use in our state. We have 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. And they're supposed to come together and they're supposed to work out their details and work out their differences and come up with this map. Well, I can just tell you that when that happens, the Republicans are lousy negotiators. If I negotiated as a lawyer like the Republicans negotiate with Democrats, none of my clients will come back to me. Okay? Our guys are horrible. And so it always happens. And so the Republicans, the conservatives, get hosed in the redistricting process. Well, that's what happened this time. Okay? The map favored Democrats greatly, especially over in Boise. And they were just giddy about it. And rhinos. And right, okay, and rhinos. So there was some case law. This is what's frustrating. There was some case law. So several years ago, the state of Idaho amended its constitution to come up with some, we'll call them guardrails, on how this process is supposed to work. And what that did, I won't get on the details, but what that did is that took a lot of the power away from the Republicans and the Democrats and gave it to the people and said, look, your hands are pretty much tied. If you follow these rules, this is how you redraw the map. Well, politicians don't like that. They want to be able to redraw the map that favors their interests. So what happened is the Supreme Court over the last 20 years has developed law to say, here are the guardrails for the redistricting map. And it prevented people from cheating. If you followed these rules, they really didn't have much discretion. So they threw the rules out. They engaged in discretion. They did gerrymandering. They pandered to their constituents. And when they got done, we had a train wreck. So I filed a lawsuit to the Idaho Supreme Court, and I told people, I'm so sure of this, I said, if the Supreme Court follows the law, I will win this case. The only way I cannot win this case is if they were to do what I've never seen before happen. Throw out 2 Supreme Court cases and 17 years of precedent and ignore the Idaho Constitution. And that is exactly what they did. We have a rogue court. They threw it all out and they said, we're throwing away the Constitution, we're throwing away the guardrails. And what they said was, we're granting more discretion to the Redistricting Commission. And I will just tell you, if you want to know what the consequences of that are. The consequences that are, think about this, the Redistricting Commission, they're not elected. They're appointed. They come in and serve their appointment. You can't hold them accountable. You cannot hold them accountable. They're not accountable to anybody because they come and they do what they want to and boom, they're gone. You probably don't know who they were. I couldn't even tell you, I know a couple of them. So,
and they're appointed by the governor, right?
No, the way it's done is, one's appointed by the Speaker of the House, One's appointed by the Senate pro tem in the Republican Party, and one's appointed by the chairman of the Idaho Republican Party. The Democrats get one appointed by the chairman of the Democrat Party, and then they get the minority leader in the House and the minority leader in the Senate, and there's the 6 of them, okay? That's the group that did it. And they're not elected. You can't hold them accountable, and they're gone. And what the consequences of this is this. The legislature must get together in the next 10 years and fix this and make it clear to the Supreme Court they need to specifically overrule what they just did. Say the citizens of this state came up with the constitutional provisions to give us safeguards, to take away the gerrymandering, take away the partisanship, just draw the lines like a blind person would do it. That's how it's supposed to be set up. If they don't do that, then what's going to happen is we will continue to have a map every 10 years that is worse and worse for conservatives and better for liberals. So they have to go fix it. That's a really good question.
So is it the U.S. Constitution gives the right to the legislature to run the elections, right?
No.
So like, who really has the power to decide what the map looks like?
Okay. So here's what happens. This fight takes place every 10 years around the country. When you get a new redistricting map, if you're in Georgia, they're hosing over Republicans, and if you're in Idaho, we should be taking advantage because we're a majority party, right? But but when you put 3 liberal Republicans on the redistricting commission, and they're going to go negotiate with Democrats, that's when you get a bad map, and that's what they do, okay? I mean, it's no secret that the chairman of the Republican Party is friends with all the establishment, and he was the one that got an appointment. And so it's actually the legislature that gets to do it. The people passed an amendment 20 years ago that made it very clear how it's supposed to work. But the Supreme Court threw it all out, ignored it, and so they haven't had fidelity to the state constitution. So now the legislature needs to come in with some legislation and make it clear, this is what we intend and you guys cannot do that to us. If we don't do that, 10 years from now, we'll be in worse shape. Okay, that's a really good question. Yes, ma'am.
So did your lawsuit against that, did it fail?
Yeah. So here's what happened. We filed our lawsuit, went to the Idaho Supreme Court, and we went to the hearing, and the judges were asking all the right questions. I'm like, I got done with the hearing. I'm like, okay, I got the law on my side. They ask all the right questions today. They understand this. And then there was a guy that wrote the opinion. His name was Stegner. Turns out Stegner is probably likely a liberal Democrat. They don't ever say what they are, but we know his brother was really good best friends in the legislature who served with Bart Davis, who was on the commission for the Republicans that did the map. I kept wondering, how did these guys, they went so far afield of the law. It's like, what makes them think that the Supreme Court would ever affirm what they did? Next thing I know, Bart's good friend brother wrote the opinion from the Supreme Court. I'm not saying anything bad about the Supreme Court. I'm just saying that's what happened. It totally shocked me. Lawyers around the state were like, how could this possibly happen? And now they're called a rogue court. That's what people think they are. So we did lose. We lost. But in order to do it, have you ever heard of a Supreme Court overturning precedent? Rarely does it happen. Rarely. I've never seen 2 Supreme Court cases overturned by a Supreme Court in one case, ever. Those guys just rewrote the law in Idaho. They legislated from the bench to do that. And I got to be careful because I'm a lawyer, and they can sanction me if I say bad things about them. So I've got to be very careful even the way I say my words. But that's where we are. Okay, it's a tough place to be. Other questions for me? Nobody wants to. Oh, over here.
So I have the impression it's very hard to get people to run against sitting Supreme Court members because they're worried about having their law careers destroyed. And how do you?
I've seen it happen. When I ran in 2014, there was a guy running in the Supreme Court, because our judges are elected every 4 years. They have to stand for re-election. I saw in 2014 there was a guy from Boise running against one of them. I went to a Lincoln Day in Jerome County, and the justice was there campaigning. You know what he was saying? About this guy wasn't there. He was making fun of him. Do you know what my opponent does for a living, he said? He's a personal injury lawyer. And I'm like, I'm sitting there, listen to that, he's making fun of it. And had that guy been there, under the ethical rules, he wouldn't be allowed to say anything bad about the justices, because you're not allowed to say anything bad about a judge. They can't sue you, but they could sanction you. So the very body that he's running against is the body that makes the rules that regulate what he can say. So it is and people don't realize this, right? The Supreme Court, our judicial system, is 1/3 of the balance of power. It is very, very important we get the right people in there, and we really haven't paid any attention to it. So for example, if our legislature would do their job on how to fix this, what we would do is we would have, if there's a nomination for a judge, they would have to go to the Senate and get approval through a hearing process where they're asked questions. What do you believe? What do you think? What about this that you said? That's not our system in Idaho. If you get nominated to be a judge, the way it works is this. You just put your name forward that you want to be a judge. Then you go to a judicial council. The judicial council is appointed by the governor. And some other people. Then what happens is you go to the council, and then they pick 3 people. And then the governor gets to pick one of the 3. And there's never cross-examination. There's never an examination of their background. They never ask them what they believe, what their judicial philosophy is. That's what we do in Idaho, and that needs to be fixed. And when you win, you need to get that. You need to go over there and say, look, we need to have these guys, once they've been nominated, once they've been nominated, then they need to go through a series of hearings like we do in the federal system, right? We're doing that right now with that one lady. Now, she's going to get appointed, but at least we really know what we're getting, right? What we have now, we have no idea what we're getting. What's that?
Just commenting.
Yeah, we have it. The judicial system in this state it needs some serious overhaul and improvement, in my view. And I'm an attorney. I know all about it, so I can say it, right? But you're right. They don't like to run. Who wants to go run against a Supreme Court judge? And then you go to the next. You run against him. Why? Because he's a lousy judge. And then if you lose, you go to the Supreme Court, and he's hearing your case. That's a bad system, right? But it should be, those guys should be picked by the Senate, or confirmed by the Senate, appointed by the governor, and that way it bypasses the system. But right now you run against these guys, and then they judge your cases. And one of them was Jim Jones. Everybody know who he is?
Yep.
Okay. Jim Jones, I think, is unfit to be a judge, and I would say that publicly. I've seen him in action. I actually had a case with him. I had a young man who was he was involved in a DUI, and he was the one drinking, and it was on the job, so it was an issue about his whether he qualified for unemployment or workers' compensation benefits because he was injured on the job while he was drinking. And there was a real question about that. And I remember his response to me was, "Yeah, we all know what it was like to be young one time. I don't need to read the facts on this case." Kind of what he was saying to me. So anyway, the judicial system needs some serious help. Any other questions for me?
I've heard you hate veterans.
Oh yeah, I hate veterans. In fact, I'm speaking to a group of them next week. So let me just say this to you. In the world of politics, when you're a 22-year incumbent like Mike Simpson and you have no record to run on, none, you cannot come out and say, so I ran against him. The first thing he did is he went right to the sewer and started getting negative on me. You would think after 22 years he could come out and say, hey, remember I sponsored that bill to give Second Amendment rights some strength. Oh yeah, I never did that. In fact, I've been really bad on Second Amendment. You know, I was the one that did this for pro-life. No, can't say that. And so when you run right to negative ads when you're when you've been in it for 22 years, it's because you have nothing else. And all you can do is sling mud. So when you see these ads, etc., just understand that what they say in these ads is, what did President Trump call it? Fake news, right? In fact, it's so bad that remember Trump went through the Russian collusion thing? Remember CNN, MSNBC, all the major news networks had said for 2.5, maybe 3 years that he was guilty of Russian collusion. Remember that?
Right.
And then when it turned out there was not one shred of evidence, they still wouldn't even apologize. If you went and did a survey among Democrats today, probably 60% of them still think he was engaged in Russian collusion. But that's what they do. And this is why Christians don't like to get involved in politics, because they defame you, they demonize you, they do that. And unfortunately, sometimes that works. Let me wind up by just saying this. People have asked me why it is that I want to go to the swamp. Is that a good question? Because it's a swamp, right? Why would you want to go? I think it's fair for me to answer that for you. I really don't want to go to the swamp. I have a really good law practice. I've got a great other businesses in town. I've got 10 acres I live on. Spring is coming. They were out trimming my trees today from that storm we had last October that broke a bunch of branches off. I love Idaho Falls. I love my family. And in fact, my kids are all raised now, and so I can finally find my tools again. So that's good. I don't find them in the grass. So things are good for me. Okay, my trees are mature. I live in a good place. But I would ask you, are there any of you that would want to ask you? Okay, do you want to run into a burning building? No. No. But you would.
I would.
For what?
My dog.
Your dog, because you love your dog, right?
Yeah.
People would run into a burning building because they love their dog, or they love their grandchild, or they love something.
Right.
So we will go and do things that we don't like to otherwise do for things that we love. As Americans, we have always gone to the fight. If you look at the Civil War, the North, where did they go? They went to the South. That's where the fight was. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, we took the fight to Iwo Jima because that's where the fight was. When the fight was on the beaches of Normandy, Americans went to the beaches of Normandy. We always go where the fight is. For me, the biggest threat to our ability to be free and make our choices, now there's threats all over in the state, I get it. But in Washington, D.C., we're given rules by nameless, faceless regulators and bureaucrats, and you can't even talk to them. They don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. Their job is to regulate our lives. I feel like the biggest threat to our freedom is in Washington, D.C. That's where the fight is for me. So because I want people to be free, and that's what I love. You love your dog. I love dogs too.
I love my husband too, but you know.
You may not run to a burning building for him. I get it.
No, he'd be dragging me out.
I was thinking today when somebody was talking about something about my wife. She says, you know, most people pray before they get married. Am I marrying the right person? My wife is still waiting for an answer to that. So for me, the fight's in Washington, and that's a fight that I could be good at. And so that's why I'm willing to go to the swamp, because for me it's like running into a burning building to save something that I love. And what I love is for people to be free without the government telling us your 3 healthcare plans are gold, silver, or bronze. Well, what if I want a platinum? No, I can't have that. What if I want a lead one? Nope, can't have that one either. Well, what if I don't want one? We're going to fine you, even if you're sitting on your couch. Remember that? The Obamacare fine didn't even do anything. So that's why I'm willing to do it. And I really appreciate the time to speak here. It was, oh, she has another question. Yes.
It's kind of, sort of on subject, but when you were talking about judges,
yeah.
I never understood why you get the ballot and you have judges on there. Some are new, some are old, and they want you to vote on them, and there's nobody running against them.
Oh, I can tell you that.
And
okay.
How do we know? How do we get rid of them if we can't vote them out?
Okay, so here's how it works. Everybody knows what she's talking about? You get your ballot, and there'll just be, you know, let's just say, you know, Judge Watkins. Do you want to vote to retain him or not? The way it works is, if they're not challenged, then it isn't, do you pick A or B? If they're not challenged, you vote to retain them or not. And if they get more no votes than they do yay votes, then they lose their job.
But
okay?
How do you know that there's no record? If you're not a lawyer, how do you find out whether they were crappy or not?
And you can't speak bad about them.
Is that plain? It is difficult, right? It's very difficult. Yeah, it's hard to know, right?
So there's no answer to that one? I mean, how we know?
Not on record.
Not on record.
You have to know their decisions, right? I mean,
You'd have to know their decisions,
You have to
right?
go look through all their decisions.
Yeah, I will tell you that there are some judges that I can already tell you what the issue is, how it's going to come out. It shouldn't be that way, right? I know judges who will fold. I've got a case right now I filed in a different county than this county because I knew how every judge in this county would rule because it's a high-profile case. We could file in a different county, we did. Why? Because none of those guys, I have filed cases in front of judges and gotten 3 disqualifications from them. I ain't handling that case, I'm not doing that case, I'm not doing that case. They didn't want to be the guy to make that decision in Bonneville County. Happens all the time, okay? Our judicial system needs some help. And I think it's one of the weakest branches of the 3 because when Brad Little vetoes a pause for 1 year, everybody can see that, right? When Butch Otter vetoed the grocery sales tax repeal, that's another case I took to the Supreme Court. Everybody could see that. But when a judge makes a decision in a very narrow case that nobody else is paying attention to, and it really messes stuff up, nobody sees that. Or in a divorce case, you know, the judge doesn't like men and he likes women, or the woman judge hates men and likes women, or whatever it is. People don't see that. And there's no way to really broadcast that, so nobody knows. And you end up with a continual, a problem with that. That is tough. You could always ask me, I can tell you. Any other, what's that?
Off the record.
Yeah, off the record.
Okay, off the record.
Yeah, I'd tell you off the record. Any other questions for me? This has really been delightful to have this discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a few things. Yes?
Bryan, this is not a question, but you're going into the swamp in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And we now know we have a swamp in Idaho.
Yes.
And we need good people put in Idaho to counteract the swamp that's following what's happening in Washington, D.C.
And that is why I gave you the formula today.
Mm-hmm.
What did I say? There were 4 things.
4 things.
They need to be capable.
That's right.
Right? Is President Biden capable? No, he's not.
No.
So he's disqualified, but he's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to find people who are capable, who are trustworthy / honest, who fear God. Why is that important? Because if you fear God, then you're a faith-based person. And if all you ever learn, this is what I tell my kids, if all you ever learn is what you learn from your 5 senses, what you see, smell, taste, touch, or hear, you're not going to learn very much. Because there's still another dimension of faith that teaches us a lot more than all those things combined. So we need to have somebody who's capable, trustworthy, fears God, and what's the last thing? Don't take a bribe. Yeah, and go, you can look at in any of these races, you can go look, and you'll see that people get big contributions from big corporations in this state. Well, why are they getting those? And if you look at a lot of the other guys, they don't get that. That says a lot about things, does it not?
Yes.
So I gave you the 4 keys, I think. They were good enough for Moses and Jethro. I think they're good enough today.
Good enough for us.
They're good enough for us. If we would do that, if we had people in every position, in judgeships and legislative positions and the executive positions, who all were capable, who were trustworthy and honest, and who feared God and wouldn't take a bribe, we would be the greatest, we would have the greatest state in the nation.
That's right.
We wouldn't have that. So that's why I felt I wanted to share with you, because there's so many races that are going on that it is the key for all these races. All right? Well, thank you so much, Emily. Thank you. Oh, we have one more question.
One more question. What site do you go to like check the flow of the money? So, you mentioned it briefly. I've tried to find that. I've tried to find it and look things up, but I didn't get anywhere with it.
So in a federal race, you got to go to what's called the FEC, Federal Elections Commission. you look there. If you're looking at a state race, you go to the Idaho Secretary of State. Now, it used to be a lot better, but after Lawrence Denny won and went and fixed the site, it doesn't work anymore. Okay? Remember I said capable is an important thing? It's very hard to track it. If you try to look how hard it is, it's really hard to follow it. It used to be really easy. It's so simple. Now I always hand it to somebody else. Would you find this for me? But it is there, the Secretary of State's office. They have an elections division. You can look under campaign contributions. You can find it. It should be easier to find. And you can just see. You'll see things like, you'll see stuff from like, Blue Cross contribution, Blue Shield contribution, PAC contribution from the contractors, from the teachers unions.
Other legislators.
What's that?
Other legislators.
Other legislators. And you know how that works, right? And how everybody understands how that works? You can only give $1,000. But if you get money as a legislator, and from a donor who gives you $1,000, gives them $1,000, then you can take your $1,000 and give it to them. That's how it kind of works. So you could also follow that, see how the money gets passed around. But it's very clear. It's very clear how these campaign contributions are being paid out by different entities. You can see it. That's where it is. Okay?
Just one comment, there's actually a website called followthemoney.org. I think that actually is pretty good, and it does it on a national level, and you can even drill down into the local levels.
So I think does that follow salaries of government employees? I thought that's what it was.
I think it can too. So
you can invent your own one called showmethemoney.com. Right? Show me the money. Anything else before I sit down?
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about how Facebook is coming into CUNA and how that came about?
I don't know that much about it, except know that Facebook got a special deal cut by either Ada County or the state, I'm not sure which, to give them some special tax breaks so they could bring in a bunch of employees. And they're going to have a Facebook facility there where they hire people to do Facebook things. That's all I know. And the criticism has come from why does a big corporation get a special deal for their taxes, and anybody else, the ones that have been living here for 20 years. I have the same problem with my phone company, and sometimes my insurance company. Okay? If you are a long-time Verizon customer, you pay, let's say, $80 a month for your phone. But if and you've been with them for 100 years, $80. But if you're a brand new one, they'll let you go start off at $40 for the first 3 years.
I complained about that one too.
Yeah,
it's
right.
like a new discount, a new client
Right.
discount.
Or if I have a car that's with my insurance company and I pay the premiums, they go up every year, right? Well, after my car's 10 years old, my premiums are still way up. If I go to a brand new company, they go, "Oh, that thing's an old car. We're going to make your premiums low." So that's the issue over in Boise with that company. Okay.
And that's a public-private partnership, right?
She called it a public-private. She asked me, "Is it a public-private partnership?" I think it is a public payoff to a private entity. That's what I think it is.
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing. All right. Well, thank you for letting me come. It was really enjoyable. I can see when my wife figures out what you guys are doing, she'd love to come down and do this. I think you're going to find a lot of women really will like to do this. And part of the reason for that is I don't know. Did you used to go to the Republican women's group?
No, I
did. A lot.
That's pretty much been blown up, right? It's no longer in existence.
No.
And there really is a need for that. In fact, for the Lincoln Day for Bonneville County, we're going to have a dessert dash. Y'all know what that is by any chance? Okay? No, yeah. So dessert dash is you go to the tables and at our meeting, and there's going to be no dessert served. You have to bid on some desserts, and people that bid first bid the most. They get to go get the food first. Well, I said we had to split this with the women of the Republican Party. But there is no functioning Republican Party in Bonneville County, so we did it with the Madison women. They're going to make about $4,000 doing that.
We would have done it for you.
But I didn't know you guys were in operation. Okay. All right.
Next year.
Now I can't breach the. We'll bid on it. Should we do that?
Yeah. Bid on it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll bid on it. I won't be here to deal with it. Okay. So let me hand the microphone back over to Emily. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for coming, and
Go out there where everybody can see you.
Oh, they can see
And the
me
camera,
here.
you
Oh,
know.
the camera. Thank you all for coming and your support with this. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun. You're welcome to leave whenever. If you want to stick around, we'd love to hear any of your ideas that you have for the group, ways that we can get people to know about us or to be interested in knowing what we're doing, or things that we can do. So if you have anything like that you want to hang out and chat about, that'd be great. If not, then we thank you for coming. We will have another one next month. We have some ideas. We don't have it set yet, but we will do something, and so we'll let you know. So keep an eye on the Stand Up for Idaho, and make sure if you get us your email, if Doug doesn't already have your email, get us your email and we can get you on the list. So, any questions? Anything else, Doug?
No, we're good. I would just like to thank you, ladies, for doing this, because I think it's a great idea and it provides a very big opportunity for a lot of the people in town and that haven't been able, just like you said, haven't been able to attend our evening meetings. This is going to be a great venue to do so. Thank you very, very much.